We got something different today. We're going to talk about the Baccarat game in my neighborhood. That was, I don't know, close to from the '60s to until I was there. Maybe about 2002 was the last one I was at. But obviously, I wasn't there in the '60s. So my run was about 12 years. I got there in 1990 and I worked it. I started as the coffee guy, coffee boy. But if 300 to 700,000 a day, that's what I was making when I was a kid. I was probably making more than my freaking friends' parents were together in one day than they were doing in a week. Um, so that's how it started. I don't mean to, because people say, but that was one job I liked. I wish I could still have that barista job. You know what I mean? But it started back in the '60s. My uncle John started it, and so it was a. That's my uncle John, because he died a couple years ago. He was a captain in the Bonanno family, so he started the game on Knickerbocker Avenue, and it didn't go it wasn't a two family thing at the time. It got that way around 75, 74, and the reason behind that was both families ended up having the game together, but it wasn't like that at that point, because being that Bushwick and some parts of Ridgewood were very Sicilian. You either had loyalty to the Bonanno Sicilian faction, or you had loyalty to the Gambino Sicilian faction. So these places, which were coffee shops, were like the Italian Americans, what they are as social clubs. Same thing, same idea. The only thing was we were open to the public, sort of. You walk in there, you get in there if you want, and there was only two types of coffees back then. It wasn't like Starbucks. You either got a cappuccino or an espresso. That's the one my brother takes over in '83. My brother Phil, and oh, there he goes. Fuck him. But anyway, let's keep going, and that's where we're at with that. So the game turns out after a while, a couple of people have it's a lucrative. I remember Bobby Glasses telling me as a kid, he went in there, he was up like 5,000. He took a break. Had that's Bobby, good guy. Um, had Uncle Pete, who was a sandwich guy for years. All right, so he would make a sandwich at the game. I'll give you the whole chain of employees, if you will. So he made him a sandwich, and while he made him a sandwich, he went to play again, and he ended up losing $6,000. He says that was the most expensive sandwich he ever had, and it was a game that ended up being more bigger in the '70s. I remember Vito Licata um, ended. I don't remember hearing it. Vito Licata ran it in the '70s. He gets killed in '72, and he basically had a couple of guys that stayed with the game for a long time. One was Joe the Artist, who was a dealer. So if you're familiar with the Baccarat game, you have the dealers. You have one dealer usually, but in this case, he was also an auctioneer. He was called the Artist because he's very you thought he was one of those Italian movies like Fellini films. You know what I mean? But and just used words that normal Sicilians wouldn't understand. He talked a lot in dialect when he was wanted to
Okay.
be more important, but he was
Very
good for the
eccentric,
game.
an eccentric character.
Not really,
Very like
more of a
okay.
bullshit artist, but
Bullshit. Joe the artist as in bullshit artist.
and not as bullshit, and just like he sold it. He wouldn't volunteer bullshit. He just
Okay.
act as if he
I thought
been
he was
there, done
artsy. I thought he was
that.
artsy. I thought that's
Bohemian, maybe, I guess.
okay.
I don't know. It depends who you talk to.
Yeah.
But in the '70s, the game gets with Vito. Vito gets killed, that's Vito Licata. And we talked about him. He was one of the Licata brothers. They killed him in a pool, and he was also my uncle's Gumbada. But my uncle wasn't there no more, my Uncle John, because he was in and out of the United States. At the time, he had gotten into, they were investigating him a lot during the Bonanno War. So he, you, oh, okay, Scott H goes, I'm not in the Lamb no more, no. Oh, yeah, so he ended up coming again in and out. I get to see him for the first time that I remember, maybe 7, 6 years old. So you figure that's 1976, 77. So he was always between two countries, and a lot had to do with he was being investigated for the longest. Around that time, Lilo's out. So this is the game changes. When the game changes, it becomes a Gambino game and a Bonanno game.
In
And together
by the late 70s.
around 78, 77, 76, like that. So when that becomes that game, there's new laws. And one of them is that every coffee shop, because it's a seasonal game, it takes place in around October to around January, has to close.
Okay.
So the rules were you have two maid guys there always. You had two Shylocks, two loan sharks, four dealers, two food guys, a door guy, and then I changed two, and then a barista. So you go up the eventually I'm a
Right.
door guy by the time I'm at 22, 21, and that's to make sure fucking nobody breaks into the game or whatever, or you know who's at the door. You know, if you don't know somebody, obviously you don't open it. And that's when I get involved, but that's later on. But during that time, you had different people. So during like the Pizza Connection days, you had Catalano who was there, and then you had Patsy Conti who represented the Sicilian faction of the Gambino family. So not him, but he would put somebody there. And if Catalano was there, it's just because he was there. He had his own guy too. At times, Caesar would be there, and then they would have the old man Bonomo, which we heard about already. And that's when the game was the most lucrative because think about it, right? This was on the Pizza Connection, so you can only imagine the money that was at that game.
Yeah.
The money trickled down, like all the employees. How do you get that job back then? You had you it wasn't like it wasn't employment. You had to be put there by somebody, you know, and at
Even at
that
like the lowest rung of that job, whether it be a guy making coffee or whatever it may be, you'd have to know somebody. That's so
absolutely, yeah, yeah. I mean, like that's I tell you, it was a pretty lucrative job at the time, you know,
right.
and a lot of guys like if they were on the hook for some money and they were around some guy and they wanted him to make some money so he could pay off his shit and they liked him, they'd give him a job at the game and you've seen a lot of that. And during that time, but during like let's say the Pizza Connection days, it was a big, huge ass game, and Tony Aiello also led money at the game at one point that we talked about the other day. There he goes. So it was a very big game. Like you understand what a Texas Hold'em table looks like?
Yeah.
Picture that full with freaking all money, all green on the table, and putting it together. Because you could auction off the bank if you know what that means. It's like blackjack. Let's say if you think a blackjack shoot has a good 6, 7 streaks in it, the
Right.
next right, but so after one guy loses, you could auction off the shoe, thinking that you have a nice streak. You could be the dealer or you could be the player.
Okay.
Okay,
So
and
then
and
you bet on the dealer or the player, basically. Is that
You could
kind
you
of
could give some money to the other guy, but they auction it
right?
off for 3,000. Somebody thinks it got a couple of good shoots in it. I'll say, yeah, I'll take it, 3,000. Then Jody artists go 4,000, then it's 4,000 and 5,000, and that's where it's pretty loud. You got people around. They go, I'll take some of that action. I'll take.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
back in the day, it wasn't impossible for somebody starting at 50,000. Said, boom, right there you go. So people, there was outside money. There was four dealers, and at the same time, maybe back then there was always two, one controlling one auction off, and bang, they would bang it out.
Wow. So let me ask you the payment structure as far as how much the house takes in from a game. I guess how many
Five
points?
percent,
5%.
5%. Yeah, that's a
Okay.
lot. But at the same time, shoots could go on for maybe between if there's a lot of money between the whole fucking confusion, getting the money together, taking out for the part, having the Jody artist look at you with a sorry face because he wants a tip, and that whole night yacht that could take fucking like 5-10 minutes, and basically that they split it up, and he takes the tips. Of course, he always used to pat it himself a little bit better than everybody else, and they take and this goes on all night. Every time there's a new shoe, there's 5% that to be taken off. So that's a lot of money right there.
So uh barista, sandwich guy,
Got a
door
sandwich guy.
guy,
Yep.
or food prep guy, whoever, whatever it may be. As far
Right.
as them getting paid, that's solely tip based.
It's all tip based. It's not you're
Okay.
not getting a salary, but every night you came in at the slows. The slows we used to make, and there was not a lot of even when in the '90s when I got there, the slows a night could be is $150, but that was back then. But I'm talking about the '70s now. Actually, my brother starts off as a door guy. We talked about him. He starts off as a door guy, and he's put there by you would think my uncle, but he's not. There's a couple other guys that put him there, the whole Sicilian faction. A couple of guys that are dead now, not around. And there was another guy there that was Mimo Tartamello, who also worked the game, who was also around the Sicilian faction, like a brother to us growing up. There he goes. So
Tell me about this guy. You say he's
Mimo
a pizza connection
was
guy.
hung out with, well, not really into that faction. Never really implicated on drugs. He died not too long ago.
Well, Ronzavelli did. He was lying though.
But he also ran.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ronzavelli was the bullshit. We're gonna talk. He's our Sicilian Iceman from now
Yeah,
on.
yeah. He had him in a Porsche. He had him in a Porsche transporting heroin, I believe. And then he said, "No, I made it up. I'm sorry. It was a lie."
Right, right. Mimo ran Al Dente Pizza. Al Dente Pizza was the place where, if you ever watch those documentaries, they're making those phone calls outside of Al Dente, and
Okay.
Baldamente's Gadano Baldamente's nephew's calling Italy, and they tapped that phone right there. That's outside of Al Dente. Now Al Dente was a South Catalano place too. So that's who he was. He kind of he made a pretty good dollar. Like to gamble. I like to gamble. A lot of people like to gamble. So after it was all said and done, yeah, David, he was. All it was said and done, you know, people went back to fucking 101 because that money started disappearing. So around 84, you get the pizza connection case. You got a lot of these guys in jail. A lot of that money ain't around no more, and the game slows down. It's in Bushwick. Bushwick in the 84 around that time, even in 79, it was starting to go down. 79 was it was getting to it was getting. We talked about it. 1977. Check out that episode if you want to see what Bushwick was like. So the game was slowing down between people not really wanting to go there, afraid of winning money and leaving and getting robbed. There was a lot of things going on, and most of it was that the guys weren't around almost. So around 86, 87, my uncle Frank takes the game, and he's given to him. And my uncle did not want to be there in the worst way. He at one point he used to just stay there till around the game start, and he would leave. But that's around the time he's there. And there's the old man Mike. Mike is Chifaloo. That's Dominic Chifaloo's dad. Uncle Mike, who was an amazing man. He was a great guy. Grouchy. He just told it the
Don
way it
Teflo's
was.
father, his father, Mike. Is that what you're
Yeah, his
saying?
dad, Utu Miguel, we call him. I mean, it's
So
Uncle Mike.
he was doing what in reference to the game at that point?
He was just being there, sorting out seed freaking. You see when you got these two figureheads in there, and they're both made at the game. Um, One would stay longer, one than the other usually, but they would just yap it up all night. But it was a special time in my life, especially when I started working, because I remember Uncle Mike. Uncle Mike was a beautiful man. I loved him. And he didn't. I have stories that he would fucking tell people the way it was. He didn't give a shit, and he did it in English, even though he talked predominantly Sicilian. He had this Palermo accent, but when he tell you, "Go fuck yourself," he did it, and it was
Like
great.
what? What would be a reason though?
Um, One day, he had this one kid that was working the door, and his name was Caesar. And Caesar was just this hypo motherfucker, just all over the. He hung out more with my brother, and he told him that he wanted to be an actor because I think Blaze had told him that he could come with him and or Anthony. One of the Carrazzo brothers went to acting. I don't remember with Blaze or Anthony, whatever.
Right, yeah.
I think it was around the time for that one movie, the Bronx Tales. So they said, "Hey, come over there." So he's telling me about he's got a shot. He could take it. He thinks he's like the next fucking Robert De Niro. But this is one during the game goes, and my dumb brother convinces him to go to ask Uncle Mike. Don't worry about it. But Uncle Mike is always he's always looking for him. Like
Right.
put this in my car. Go park my car. Do this and that. So he's not really no nonsense type of guy. By the way, if you liked you, you liked you. If you didn't like you, that was just the way. So this fucking guy, he decides to to take my brother's advice, but my brother's fucking with him because he's good at that. And he goes over there and he goes, "Hey, Uncle Mike, can I talk to you?" And we're hiding, and we know it's coming up. So he goes, "Hey, you're fucking what, Robert De Niro? You want to go join a movie? Go fucking make money and shut the fuck up." The actor, he's doing that all fucking night,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
was
yeah.
fucking. Man, he set himself up with that. And poor Bobby, he was not poor Bobby. Bobby was almost peeing his pants. Bobby got Caesar the job there at the door. We're talking about people looking out for each other. It was like a family, bro. It was like a family. The Baccarat game was like a family. We stood together for 3 months from October to I'd say fuck around January when the game got weaker, and the game did die out during the
Well, you say Bobby Glasses. Was he controlling some of that game?
eventually, and like my uncle, but he just inherited. There was a lot of these guys. They were like, "Ah, fuck."
Well, that's wild
Um,
because you have a guy like him who kind of comes up growing up and he knows the game as a younger guy, and then he ends up kind of taking it over later. It's funny how that works sometimes, right?
yeah, but it wasn't the same game either. But at the same time, it was a lot of people used to come to this game. I remember when I started working around 90, yeah, I get the job and it's moved to Giannini's coffee shop. They get out of the bad neighborhood. We go up to Bridgewood and they have it at Giannini's. I remember the what's his name? Fucking Quack's son used to come, the older one a lot. The good kid too, the one who died. Really nice guy. John. John used to come a lot. His friend Pete, he used to come with this guy Pete. They were gamblers. They were always there. A lot of people. Howie was
All right.
regular
Yeah.
around 95, 96. I think he had come out of jail at the time. He had done a bullet in Rikers, and he used to come to the game as well. But this game then it moved again, and the reason why it moved a lot was because a lot of people who owned these places were afraid that cops would fucking come in there and just destroy it. Like Janini's
Right.
was a nice place around 90, and we do get raided. I see an Italian guy come in there with a fucking gun while I'm in the back just before the game starts. And he's got a gun on. I said, "Oh shit!" I mean, I'm worried about my uncle because I'm talking to him right next to him. I said, "This motherfucker's ready to take a shot." And and he came in, and then he showed the badge, and there was like 20 of them. They grabbed Caesar and another guy Zeke who was at the door. He was a sandwich guy. They were trying to hold the door, and they just barreled. They arrested both of them because for being at the door, and they took them in with them. I'm laughing because these were just great memories. But my uncle puts that face on he used to with the mugshot, and
Oh
he's
yeah.
not happy. He was about to go home about 5 minutes, and then he gets caught up on this. They
Fuck.
let us go. They don't let him go. They arrest the other two. He says he was just there, and it- well, yeah. So they were there. So while we're leaving, I keep looking at the comments. So as they're leaving, the cops, we're leaving. We're all outside, and I see Vito Grimaldi out there because he's seen the commotion. And I'm like, "What the hell are you doing here? Don't go here. They're gonna fucking, they just let us go." And then here's Louis with Steve circling the block. All of a sudden, there's a backup car takes a picture of both of them.
Oh
For
no.
like, what the fuck are you doing here anyway? They were in the place, but they were outside. So,
Was that Messino's building?
no, that comes out later. So all these games, all these fucking games in particular, all these this game that was going on, um, it causes fucking. We're laughing about it, but it's a Rico. Oh,
Right.
so many Ricos came out of this fucking game. That's unbelievable. Like the first, I testify in 3 cases. Okay, I testify in 3 cases. Guess what I testify against? 4.
For gambling, I assume, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it links. It's a piece that links these guys to these
Right, right,
fucking games. And what links Joe Messino to the game? His building. So
right.
there's this his building on Fresh Pond Road. This is one of the last days of this game over the years. So again, we moved to his place. He goes, "Why don't you move the place to Sandro's place?" Sandro's is a made guy in the Bonanno family. He pays him rent. Place wasn't doing too well. Joe's fucking greedy. He says, "Yeah, give Joe get Sandro the business so he could pay me this fucking ridiculous rent, right?" So he gives it to him, and we go there, and this one really solidifies the fucking racketeering because what happens is while we're in there, we get busted in there again, but this time the feds bust us.
Okay.
So they take a picture of all of us. There's mugshot circulating. There's me, Bobby. Who was there too? I think one of my nephews that just happened to get in there. His mother would have fucking killed him. Joe Grimaldi's dad too, and the feds take pictures of us there. Whatever, we're just visiting. But since we were in the first room, they didn't bother us. But I remember this Fed as they go, "What's your name?" One lady goes, "What's your name?" And he spells my fucking last name. I mean, perfect. He looked like he was straight out of fucking like Idaho, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, that wasn't good. I said, "What the fuck, bro?" It's FIORD, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. What's up, Tito? What's up, mate? Yeah, so
This ain't your average mob genre pronunciator. This
oh,
guy,
he no. If that was we
he was
taking
ready
those
to
things,
go.
I
Yeah.
probably would have walked on a technicality. No, but yeah, so that's the game, and the game lasted for a long time, but they just broke it down. I remember I knew something was wrong because the last time it got busted, David Price, yeah, Sandro Yosio, Alosio, how do you say that? Alosio Yosio, Sandro. So the game got busted in 90 less, and then within the Cafe Village, which my uncle had the game there for a second. They closed him down. Then they busted us in the cafe, the Milan Cafe. So there was something going on. They were looking for, and that was Operation Messino. And sure enough, the gambling aspect that I do testify on Messino,
Hmm.
to get my kind of deal, if you will. That he was crying about it through the freaking WITSEC units I cost him $13 million.
He put that on you.
Yeah, he put that on
So let
me.
me ask you something. Because you said
Yeah, with
it,
every motherfucker that
right.
ratted on him, all his best friends and something, and maybe I got a hello and goodbye sometimes. I was the one who got him the $13 million forfeiture, just because I told about this fucking game.
Right. But the game, when he had the game in his building, that got raided, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not rocket science. He owns the fucking building.
Well, that's what they put on him, that he was running a game, and Sandro
Right.
was a front that worked for him. So they all went through this fucking,
But he
this
somehow
whole.
wanted to put a lot of it on you. I mean, whatever, I guess.
Well, who gives a fuck? At that point, I didn't give a shit. You know what I
Right,
mean? I,
right, right,
I,
right,
I
right.
was even when I did flip on him. Of course, there was that sense of he was who he was. Did I think he was gonna flip? No. Um, but in the back of my mind, I was trying to rational fuck in my brain anyway.
Right.
Brain incest. I started thinking, you know what? This guy was fucking trying to annihilate everything, every Sicilian fucking out there that ever gave him a fucking little bit of a chance. Look, that could have been my friends. That could have been anything. So what? I'm gonna get off on fucking life imprisonment if I go to trial by telling on fucking gambling about Joe Messino. I
Yeah.
said, but people don't see it that way. When they see who I flip on, they think just because they all got life that I contributed to their
Right.
life sentences on the violent end. I didn't. Um, did I contribute to them getting convicted? Yeah, I did that, but I didn't bring no violent aspect. It seemed like the fucking government just wanted to hear about this fucking game.
Yeah. Hey,
And
we're gonna get to that part of your life. We won't even go down
Mhm.
this because we're certainly gonna get to that
Right.
part of your life. We'll for those of you wondering that can't wait for that to happen, it's gonna happen. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
stick with this game.
Sure.
You know, this is episode 9, by the way. You guys are watching a live stream of us doing episode 9. We're going to get to your questions soon. We're going to wrap up a little bit more on the game. We're going to get to some of your questions, and then we're going to go into cafes, and we're going to cover a couple of other things. On this game, though, Frank, because you mentioned something quickly earlier, there's the idea of, okay, the game's going on. You better make sure you're closed. Go
Right, yeah.
into that aspect of the neighborhood when these places have to close, they have to show respect for what's going on over there, don't take any
Mhm.
action. Go into that and, like, what happens when they don't? Because 'Cause I'm sure that has happened.
Yeah, well, basically around October, before right, a week before the game, we have to notify the places that our players would go to, the people who would play in the game, or anyone who's Sicilian run gambling operations. We need to go to them and tell them that our game is starting at that 11:30. You guys need to close latest 12 because at 12 we start. So for 3 months, they needed to close up their fucking place. Um, and we used to do that. I was cool about it. My uncle would go with Joe Bosco, who was, he was a plumber. I don't know. I don't know how he became underboss. I guess that's how it works these days. And then shelved. So, but anyway, he was all right guy. But I heard he got a little too fucking up in his head. He used to go over there. He used to make sandwiches, by the way, over there. So we used to go there and tell people to close. He was cool about it. We have Mikey Boots, who was up my uncle's ass. He was from my town. We call him Mikey Boots because he'd wear Sergio Tacchini's and a pair of fucking Italian greaseball boots. He had no fucking game whatsoever, but he was funny though.
That's good. That's a good look. I mean,
I hope he's still alive. I don't know.
I live in New York City. I've seen tracksuits with Timberlands. I mean, I can't say that's any better or worse, to be honest.
Man, and he had the reddest fucking face in the world. This guy. Yeah. I don't know if he drank. I don't think he drank. Maybe a glass of wine or something like that. But he was at times he was tolerable. At times he wasn't so much. And Joe Bosco was related to him, I think, by marriage or something. But he ended up getting the job either through my uncle. But he had to go through my uncle anyway, so he ended up being the sandwich guy. Fuck. What else?
But what would happen though? Like, what happens? Like, okay, this guy closed. This guy closed. This guy wants to push it to 1 o'clock. He's still open. He's like, I ain't fucking closing until 1 o'clock. Well, I mean, what happens?
Oh, well, there's consequences. It's happened before. My brother actually.
Steps, though. I mean, I'm sure they just don't go in there and start beating people up.
This is what pisses me off about fucking even talking about my brother, because that's what he did. They told him to do it. He'd do it. He'd bring his fucking 10, 15 guys to go in the fucking place and tear the place apart. Fucking just like, didn't happen much, but it happened.
This gentleman right here.
Yeah, before the mic saved his mustache because that was before he really got more deep.
So your brother would actually at one point in time be that guy who had to go out there, and if he had
he'd take people and do it, and he got locked up for it. And the people who said that, I'm gonna say my late uncle did help him out, and he took 9 years and a half, 10 years, among other things too. But just what happens, what happens in that world. Fucking, you figure your family help you out, didn't help him out at all. He came out and then he wants to start shit with other people. Fuck, it's neither here nor there. Fuck him. It is what it is. I mean, he goes around telling people that I personally, not to talk to me like family members and stuff, but he talks to a cousin of mine whose wife's brother put him in jail.
Okay.
He talks to my cousin. He picks spots. That's what he does. Why does he talk to fucking Joe Shalara's wife and fucking my cousin Phil? He's the one who put you in jail. He's the one who told you were involved in the fucking the armed robberies, but you talk to him though. But you tell everybody else that, well, fuck you.
Yeah.
So that one didn't go too good.
Yeah. All right. Well, I won't put his picture up on the screen again.
Yeah, it gets me aggravated.
We won't do that again. But I want to ask you, going back in time a little bit to the 70s, because a lot of people, they get interested in this character. There's some kind of an aura around him. What is a guy like this doing at the card game?
Hanging out, fucking seeing if anybody wants money or something like that. At that point, he's a fucking he gets a little bit more involved, and he's a captain at this point. So he was running people there. He was eating off that game. Him, who else was there? Fucking I mentioned Catalano. There's fucking who else? There's Catalano that's eating off that game. And Tony Giordano, the one of the other guys. Tony Aiello was putting money out at the game.
Okay.
He was a money guy, and this game was powerful. There was different fucking like situation, like circumstances that come out of this game. There was always rumor that the Licata brothers might have got hit because they didn't close that game. Now nobody's alive that might have killed them.
Oh, wait, hold on. So we got some video though. Because we spoke about this in 1982, right? We did the episode 1982. If you guys haven't watched it, check out the year 1982. So Joe and Andy Licata, right? They get killed at their cafe. So I know you mentioned this last time, but you didn't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole. But there is a chance that maybe these guys didn't want to close, or
That was the rumor that was speculated, and it was speculated through a lot of it came out of not that I would have known. Law enforcement was digging, was trying to go through that rabbit hole, and then when that happens, other people speculate. They were trying to say that it was because of the Aiello Cafe. That had nothing to do with him. It helped him because he was the other coffee shop on Fresh Pond Road. That would be Tony. But that was, I think that was much deeper. And then Andy was just an asshole too. The brother who got killed.
yep.
But they also speculate that they went after Joe, which makes sense because after they killed Andy, they went after Joe. So who knows if it was just who knows? But most of those guys involved, they're no longer. I don't think they're no longer alive. And if one of them is, maybe who knows? I don't know who was involved, but there was only a couple of murders that were done that way back then, and
Right.
it's hard to. What I'm trying to say is, it had an mo. Put it that way.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
Andy, if we don't talk about Andy a lot. Andy was fucking a guy that people really didn't like a lot. There's a kid Coop that comes on. He had a story. They wanted to tell about Andy. I got a story about Andy. He took my brother Phil's car when he was a kid, and he was like 5 years older than Phil. Phil had just gotten his car, and he started doing donuts with him. Didn't come back. 5 years older. And my other brother who passed away, Enzo, he went home and they got my dad's rifle and they went to this place they used to hang out, Konos on DeKalb Avenue. And they chased Andy and he went right underneath the car. And they convinced my brother Enzo not to shoot him or
Oof.
fucking take him out. And there was an old guy that he just passed away. His name was Frank Ubats, Frank Goya. He talked my brother out of it, my brother Enzo. So that was years ago. He was just a fucking, bully.
Like you said, one of them was a hunchback,
That was Joe. He was the younger brother. The
like a
younger brother.
legitimate.
Yeah. I
Like
got to
a,
know the nephews too later on in
yeah.
life, and they were pretty good guys. I liked them.
Interesting.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah. I like the kids. They were good. I think they owned a restaurant or something. But that's where they are.